Welcome back, everybody. So last week, let's get straight into it. Last week, I spent quite a bit of time on here talking about Ronaldo to Man City. And I thought I handled it quite well, because bearing in mind it looked like it was done. Everyone was talking about it being done. He was definitely leaving Juventus, and Man City were the only team that could probably afford him, and they're the first team they offered to him. So probably an hour after I stopped filming this and I started posting it, it was already ready to go. So I was like, okay, cool. And then the rumours started coming that Man U were involved. And I was thinking, obviously Man U were involved, because as soon as the news leaked, all the United fans and all the ex-players and ex-managers, everyone connected to the club, would have been thinking, there's no way if Ronaldo's just going. It's not like he came out and said, my heart's set on Man City, I've always loved the club, blah, blah, blah. He kind of was offered around. It's like, well, I need to leave Juventus, who's going to take me? Man City, I guess, were offered him first, and they were like, all right, we'll take him, I guess. If you're offering us Cristiano Ronaldo, we'll take him. And then I guess Man U woke up and thought, well, if he's just being offered around and they want him, we'll take him back. Of course we'll take him back. And that's what happened. It kind of snowballed from there. And then Man City said they're out, blah, blah, blah. And I think obviously it was quite funny for everyone, well, for about an hour or two, the thought of Man City getting Ronaldo and him trotting out in a blue Manchester shirt, coming back to Old Trafford again in an opposing team. That would have been quite funny, but not to be. We've got it sorted out, boys. Exciting is an understatement. I mean, he's 30. Obviously, you'll hear a lot about him. He's 36, true. He was the third top goal scorer in Europe last year. That's also true. He was the Golden Boot winner at the European Championships. That's also true. He's a serial winner, a serial winner, like Djokovic, these elite sportsmen who, winning that's the point of sport. For me, that's why I like these kind of guys. You're there to win stuff. You're not there to be liked by everybody. Obviously, try not to break the rules, try not to, piss everyone off, but I think he's one of those guys that everyone will just draw inspiration from him, and he's not gonna come and take time off, because he wants every record in the book. Even at 36, he's gonna keep going to 40 years old probably. He wants to break every record. He wants to, in my head, I reckon he just wants to stick around longer than Messi is good for. So as long as Messi's still quite good, he wants to stick around, make sure he keeps knocking in those goals. Don't let Messi get ahead of him in any of these goal scoring charts, because obviously Ronaldo being a few years older than Messi, Messi should in theory have a longer career from here, but it's entirely possible that Messi just got from here really winds it down. He'll probably go back to Argentina after PSG. So if Ronaldo can stick around at the top level for 3 years and just outlast Messi in the top leagues, I think that's what he's going to try and do. So as if Man U didn't already have a good enough transfer window, they've gone and added one of the greatest players of all time and one of the best players on the planet right now. Forget about all time, right this minute now, he's top 10, top 5, whatever you want to guess. So Ronaldo will play centre forward instead of Cavani, or he's going to split. Well, I don't know if he's even going to split time. He'll play in that front three. He'll probably start centre forward. When everyone's fit, we'll have Rashford and probably Sancho or Greenwood has started the season much better than Sancho anyway. So it's entirely possible we got Ronaldo, Rashford, Greenwood, which, I mean, that's all I got to say. That's insane. And then you got Pogba and Bruno, all them other lads knocking around. So, I mean, from a player point of view, it's very exciting. Varane had a great start to the great opening game against Wolves. So, from a United fan point of view, it's looking very, very good. We'll see. I mean, it's obviously City looked great last week, very, very good. So Liverpool were good until well, they were up a man. Chelsea had a man sent off, and they couldn't beat them at home. So I mean, they got back in the game. They're 1-0 down from the penalty, obviously. So I mean, we'll see. I mean, the league is looking like the top four: Man City, Man U, Chelsea, Liverpool. It's that. There should be a bit of a gap, because teams like Tottenham, even though Tottenham are winning games, I don't think they're going to hang on. They have kept Harry Kane, so I think they'll be okay. But I think the top four would be the top four. It's going to be a great season. Great season. Champions League will be involved. How the squad size is going to prove a factor, and I think obviously City, United, and Chelsea have the best squads, and they can play a different team in every different competition, whereas Liverpool can't do that, and obviously other teams can't do that either. So the squad is gonna become a big factor, I think, this season. But yeah, watch this space next week for week after next, international break in a minute, for some Ronaldo gossip, Ronaldo reporting week in, week out on his heroics, no doubt. So very much looking forward to that. The FedEx Cup, last weekend, so we're at round 2 now. So if you remember, first week, the best 125 players of the season tee it up at the Northern Trust, and then that gets whittled down to the best 70 for last week's tournament, which is the BMW, which finished in a 6-hole playoff between my boy Patrick Cantlay and Bryson DeChambeau, who's getting a lot of media attention. People do actually need to leave him alone. I think a lot of it is this feud with Brooks Koepka, which I think Brooks kind of enjoys because he's that kind of character. But Bryson is kind of got a very scientific approach, very unique approach to hitting the ball far, but he's good he is good everywhere, really. Putting he can get a bit weird with this because he's got a really odd straight left arm, because all of his clubs are the same length, which isn't usual. Obviously there is a sliding scale in size, but his clubs are all the same length. So he's got a very scientific approach to how he swings the golf clubs and the actual golf clubs themselves. So he's kind of under pressure a lot. But that 6-hole playoff with Cantlay, Cantlay made 41 of 41 inside 5 feet. Now 5 feet for you and me, for amateur golfers, is a long way. You would 5 foot you should be wanting to make those putts, but they're hard putts for non-professionals. And if you're 100% inside there, that means you're always tidying up for par. You'll always grab those if you're always tidying up for par or limiting a bogey from 5 feet, which is an awkward distance, you're going to be in great shape because you're not losing shots. 5 feet is sort of 2-putt range. So if you're on the green somewhere from 15, 20 feet, you'd want to get it within, you want to get closer than that, but within 5 feet, and then you want to make that putt. So if you're always in that range, you're going to be in great shape. 41 and 41 is statistically the greatest putting performance since records began. Patrick Cantlay. So Patrick Cantlay won the 6th playoff hole. He made so many long putts. He made 10 of 12 between 10 and 15 feet, which, if you gave me 12 putts for 15 feet, all but 2 is insane. So Patrick Cantlay is leading the way. So he'll start on -10. So the way they do it, the top 30 go to this last tournament. So we've had 3 tournaments overall. This is the 3rd one, the final one this weekend. So he'll start in the lead. It's kind of like a time trial. Imagine it like a time trial. The leader starts off, and then 2 seconds later, the second place, 2 seconds after that. So they've made it, the leader goes out at 10 under, starts the tournament at 10 under, and the second place starts at 8 under, and so on and so forth. So it's pretty good. Obviously, it does mean that, I guess rightly so, it does mean that anyone who's, 7 or 8 shots back, so people who are maybe 15th or 16th in the tournament, they can't really win. So they're teeing up, they can't win the tournament. So I think they do separate. I actually don't know. I probably should look this up. They do have a separate. The tournament is the tournament. The Tour Championship is the Tour Championship. Now they'll have obviously a winner for that particular tournament, but the overall score, like we just said, so someone starts at 10 and someone will start at 0. So obviously the guy on 0 is probably not going to win the overall thing, but he might have the best score that weekend. It's hopefully you're following. There are 2 separate things going on. There's the overall score, and then the score for that week, and they will both combine, and then the winner of FedEx will get $15 million. So this weekend's going to be very exciting, just because it's the best 30 players, the best guys going out there and teeing it up. John Rahm and Cantlay are leading after round 1, because obviously we're filming today. So it's going to be out of those 2 probably, because everyone else is just too far back, I think. But you never know, someone like Rory McIlroy could shoot like 10 under and then screw everything up. Speaking of screwing everything up, or not, Jake Paul beat Tyron Woodley on the last weekend. Split decision. which didn't seem like it's one of those split decisions where one of the judges just wasn't watching the same fight as everyone else. Like, it did look like Jake Paul won the fight overall. But so my takeaway, because there's a lot of different opinions. My takeaway is it made sense. So that's my takeaway after watching it. The result made sense. Having watched them both, it made sense. Like, if you said to me, okay, Jake Paul's going to win a decision just by landing a few more punches than Woodley did, and 71 punches to 52, more or less the same in terms of percentages. They landed at about the same rate, but Jake was a little bit more active, which is unsurprisingly if you've watched Tyron Woodley fight. So it just made sense. Like, I'm not hurt. Obviously, all of them may wish he won, but clearly, it doesn't really answer many questions. It answers a few questions. Like, we're going through steps, like, of follow through from YouTube to athlete, old athlete, to old fighter, to old fighter with hands. So we're moving along the list. So Tyron Woodley is an old fighter with hands, undersized, of course, he's smaller. So now that he's undersized and old, but still a fighter, so that we're ticking a few more boxes. So we've got a lot of boxes to tick before I don't know what people want, but people want, because technically, Jake Paul, 24 years old, started boxing 3 years ago, and he's had 4 professional fights now. Or 4 professional fights. So he's a boxer. Like, he's trained to be a boxer. He's having fights. He's working through his career. He's a young lad. So at some point we need to like move away from, because he's fighting exhibition fights against athletes and non-boxers and old athletes and non-boxers. That it's not your usual going through the ranks, fighting at your local gym, fighting all boxers and kind of working your record up to 20-0 and then fighting for the title. It's sort of exhibition. So I think there's confusion. I mean, I get boxing heads, whoever, if there's any of those amongst you watching, because I'm struggling to work out how long do we keep with the banter, and when do we say, oh, okay, you're just like Tommy Fury or Josh Warrington or whoever who's trying to win world titles in boxing. Like, it's exhibition for now, and you're beating certain fighters that you've picked for certain reasons. So now all of that is fine. Like, and there was no drug testing in this fight, which is, I mean, if you've watched me for any amount of weeks, you know where I stand on that. So what's the point in that? So at some point we need to start evening that. Like, we need to start going down a particular route. Like, if we're doing exhibitions, let's keep doing exhibitions, and let's not analyze Jake as a boxer or analyze his opponents as boxers. But if we were actually going to be a world champion fighter, then let's start fighting boxers now. Or, let's say boxers now of the same size and weight and age, because we need to start ticking. This next fight, if it's not a rematch, Woodley, it needs to be another step up. So we need to either get rid of the old adage, we need to get rid of the fighter, turn it into a boxer, or we need to make it similar size. So my preference, I mean, I actually don't care who he fights, as long as it's entertaining. So that's just from my point of view. So I guess from a boxer's point of view, you want to fight someone who can box. I think that would be next. Age, I don't think is as relevant for now, and size is whatever. Let's get a boxer. Let's get a boxer who is. I mean, let's say, okay, now we go from a 39-year-old retired MMA guy to a 39-year-old boxer of somewhat similar weight, like in the ballpark, but somewhere between Askren and Woodley, or maybe even Jake Paul himself. So I don't know who that's going to be. Like, chuck a name out there and let's go with that. Or you could fight an ex-UFC striker. I mean, here's the thing, and this I've been thinking about this kind of on and off. Conor McGregor is 40 pounds lighter than Tyron Woodley and Jake Paul. So I'm thinking, like, this is what's actually kind of slightly concerning. Like, Jake Paul, Conor McGregor is a mismatch in size. Like, it is. Like, Jake Paul is a lot bigger than Conor McGregor, and I'm not going to make any statement at this point, but I am my attention is on it anyway. I'm looking at it thinking that could be interesting. Like that could be interesting because Jake, depending on how long this takes and how long Conor takes, boy, I'm not sure. But that's what I'm saying. I'm saying I'm not sure. I'm not saying anything else, but I'm not sure because the size thing is big. It is very big, and given another couple of years' experience, we could have a fight. We could have a fight. Suffice to say that. So I think next thing up, I think for sure we're gonna want. It's gonna have. It can't be another. It's got to be either a younger guy who can fight, or an older guy who's a boxer. I think they're the two. They're either get like a current. I mean, in Kamara, people who you'd have to. I think now you have to have hands, like because now we're at a stage where Woodley took him 8 rounds. Jake Paul was never going to knock out Tyron Woodley, who is experienced in fighting and has got hands. So like clearly now we know where the levels are. I think that's one thing I guess against Jake Paul, if that's a possibility, that Jake Paul's never going to take out Tyron Woodley there. So Jake Paul shouldn't probably be taking out fighters, because we're not going to include Askren in that because he wasn't fighting with hands. He's not going to take out a fight with hands because they can throw back and. Tyron Woodley did have Jake on the ropes, and he mentioned something. Tyron Woodley mentioned about the ropes being like really rigid. So obviously Jake got held up by the ropes. So we'll see. I think the next fight's gonna be interesting. He's got a load of names on there. Gervonta Davis and Canelo are on that list. Conor McGregor's on that list. His brother Jake Logan's on that list. KSI, I can't remember if KSI was on the list or not. Tommy Fury makes sense, to be honest, because they've had similar amount of experience. Tommy Fury can box. Like, I like Tommy Fury over Jake Paul based on what I saw, or what I've seen his whole career. But Tommy Fury, Jake Paul could work, but I think Jake would rather. If Jake is a businessman, clearly. I think Jake will take this. I think Woodley will get the tattoo. They had a bet that whoever loses gets a tattoo of "I love the other person." I think Woodley gets that tattoo because he realised he makes $2 million for fighting Jake. You double that, you might even double that for the next fight. Let's say he makes $4 or $5 million. If you're making that many million to fight Jake Paul twice and take no damage, mate, of course you'll do that. So, from a business point of view, I think for the same reason Conor McGregor is going to fight Nate Diaz again, I think take the fight. You might get the win next time. I mean, Tyron Woodley can beat Jake Paul. It's not like there's not a mismatch there. Tyron Woodley can beat, especially with the adjustments. I think Tyron Woodley's more likely to make better adjustments to beat Jake Paul a second time. So I'm here for a rematch. But I think we learned. What did we learn? Well, we learned that. If we didn't already, we know that Jake can get in there, and he's not shy on the big occasion like that. And that's important for fighters. That's massively important. So Jake gets in there. He's not scared. That's one. Jake can box. Like we knew he can box. No one said he couldn't box. He can box. And he can overcome an experienced fighter, which is big. Forgetting about age or size and boxing experience. I mean, you should remember those things. But if you take those things out, he's still overcome another championship, elite. I mean, one of the greatest in his division and era, Tyron Woodley. So Tyron Woodley's not, he's been there under the lights, and Jake overcame him in a boxing match. So that's what we have learned. We have also learned that Jake isn't a phenom, because a phenom would have blown Tyron Woodley away. So especially with the size and the experience advantage. So we know we're kind of narrowing down on what Jake actually is, but it is entertainment. Let's make no bones about it. Like Jake Paul's fighting NBA, YouTube, ex-fighters, 40-year-old guy. Like he's not on a career path to be a world champion in my opinion, because I don't think that's what he wants. I think he wants to make quick dash to 50 million, 100 million, and then bounce. Like that's it. But it's impressive, definitely impressive, 100%. So watch this space. Finally, the Formula One. The reason why I put it last, I mean, normally when I put it last, it means it's really good. Not the case. So it rained for 90% of the weekend last weekend in Belgium. It normally does rain, but normally we actually get running. We actually get some drive acts. But the problem this time was the spray. It's not the track was obviously wet, which is obviously dangerous. But because you can't see when you're following a car behind, it's just super dangerous. If someone crashes, you're not going to be able to see, and you're going to go straight into them, and that's not what you want. So in qualifying on Saturday, everyone's flying around. Mercedes were looking good, and Max was always looking good. Mercedes were on provisional pole. Then George Russell in the Williams, the second slowest car on the grid. Well, this is. I'm trying to put it into perspective. It's kind of, I mean, it's hard to compare to like Leicester, who won the Premier League over a whole season. But in terms of one-off shock, this is probably the biggest shock I can think of in Formula One in years. Because it was, I mean, this is the second slowest car on the grid. I mean, granted, George Russell was one of the best drivers on the grid, but the car itself in the wet, they obviously set the car up perfectly in the right conditions, right tyres. They went out there, they put the car on pole position. If Max had a moment in the last corner, George Russell was qualifying fastest of everyone. But Max came through, took pole position by 0.3. Now, Sunday comes, and on the formation lap, Perez crashes off into the barrier, so he's out at the time. But it's too wet to start, so they're in the pit lane for ages and ages and ages. They do 2 formation laps to see what they can do. There's too much spray, they can't see, they go into the pit lane, and that's it essentially. All afternoon, 6 hours, or how many hours was it? It was 4 or 5 hours total. They were like in the pit lane, waiting to go out, looking for a window to go out. And then word starts getting round, obviously we start remembering what the rules are. They need 2 classified laps for it to be deemed a race and to give out half points. They need 75% race distance to give out full points. So we know we're not going to get 75% of the race distance. We're going to get like 30 odd laps. So at some point they've decided to just do 2 laps behind the safety car to give the people points, which it can't have been for the fans, because the fans are sat there in the wet all afternoon and they're not going to get any racing anyway. They've seen the cars go around a couple of times. I mean, getting 2 more laps isn't going to, give the fans value for money. Then, of course, it's a financial thing, and it's also just to get something signed and done. But to me, it's ridiculous to sort of do 2 laps behind the safety car and go, okay, cool, Max Verstappen, you've won the British Grand Prix. No matter who it is, I mean, it just so happens to be Max. The majority of people aren't going to be critical. If God forbid, if Hamilton won this race, if it's Hamilton, Bottas, and Verstappen happened to be 11th, there'd be. I mean, there is still crisis. I'm being dramatic, but I think we know. Everyone was kind of like, oh, the race is a race, and yeah, it was all done in qualifying. I don't think people would have been diplomatic if it wasn't Max Verstappen, which it is what it is. I mean, listen, you do qualifying. That's part of the race weekend, so it's not a fast. You haven't just drawn lots and said, okay, cool, Max wins. It's Max did the fastest time in qualifying. And often qualifying, I mean, listen, like borderline, if everyone goes around the track, whoever can do the fastest lap is the best on that particular day. So if you can't do racing on Sunday, you've got to classify it somehow, or you don't. I mean, it's a washout. People, football gets cancelled, cricket gets cancelled, rugby gets cancelled, tennis gets delayed. It's easier to do that. So I don't think anyone really. I think anyone, if they said it's cancelled, event cancelled, I don't think there'd be that much uproar. But the fact they went out behind the safety car and gave 2 laps just to give some points, and probably more importantly, I mean, Max Verstappen now has a win, like one more win on his thing that someone else could have got. So controversial. I think the general consensus is very, very controversial, and they weren't really that pleased by it. So championship only changes by 5 points, because Perez, even though they got him back in the classification because they fixed this car, he was out. And Bottas had a 5-place grid penalty for causing the collisions in Hungary 3 weeks ago, so he was out of the points as well. So it was only Max and Lewis in the championship, and because it's half points, which is quite lucky for Lewis because he was 3rd, he'd have lost 10 points. Now he's only lost 5. So the gap comes down to 3 points, and the constructors is down to 7 now. So if you're Red Bull, you're probably happy, and there is a hint of kind of damage limitation if you're Mercedes, because Max could have easily gone off and won that race comfortably. He could have also crashed because it's wet. There's always a chance you can spin off, but that applies to both drivers. So there is a part of I guess Mercedes or me that thinks that damage limitation happened, because I think 5 points is not a bad. If you finish 1-2, you're probably going to lose 8 points. So if anything, you've gained a little bit without risking it to try and win the race. So they're currently in Zandvoort in Holland, which is Max's home race. It's a weird track. It's a track they've not used in 36 years, and it's got a steep banking like in NASCAR, when they go around in the oval. Now they've got a really steep bank in 2 of the corners, which I guess is a USP of the track. Hamilton has led FP1 today. Max is right there. So it's going to be between them two again. There's no big surprises. Lando Norris is low-key proving to be the 3rd best driver on the grid at the minute, because he's right there with the top 2. So that's something interesting to watch out for. Kimi Räikkönen, 2007 world champion, one of my favourite drivers. So, well, I guess of all time, but at the time he was the driver I followed. He's retiring. So kind of the worst kept secret on the grid is Bottas is going to replace him in Alfa Romeo, and George Russell's going to Mercedes, which you have to do, because long term you need a world class driver to replace Hamilton. So it's going to be George, Max, Charles Leclerc, Lando Norris, which great. They're all in the best teams, best drivers. That's going to be very exciting. So we'll see what happens this week. We've got a lot of races, like I said, a lot of races coming up, and the championship is going to go back and forth throughout. You're going to need, if you're Hamilton, you're going to want to stop Max here, because if Max wins this race comfortably with all that home fan momentum, like what Lewis got in Britain, could be tough from here, because Red Bull, every single practice session, Max sets a quick time, and then Mercedes seem to respond and get close or just above. So Max is on it, and so is Lewis. So looking forward to it. I appreciate the love as always. I'll be back next week.